So, in the If Then yesterday, we did gardening. Gardening cozy mysteries, murders taking place in gardens. We showed a couple of garden books. So today I thought we'd actually read a chapter or two of one of the garden books. Cozies. Welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina Tina. This is where I read books, talk about books, no special effects, no theme music, none of that fancy stuff going on here. So, I thought we'd just read a little, the first chapter or two, see if it's worth interesting. Bloom and Doom, a designer of eye-catching bridal bouquets, many of them based on the Victorian meanings behind each flower. Audrey Bloom was used to celebrations that end with happily ever after. In fact, every couple she worked with is still together living in wedded bliss. But her perfect record is about to be broken. Her childhood friend Jenny Whitney has reeled in the most eligible bachelor in Bramble, Virginia, and she's hired Audrey to design the bouquet. But before Jenny can walk down the aisle clutching her blend of anemone and scabious and pussy willow, a floral disaster in Audrey's mind, the groom is found dead. Bloom and Doom. Beverly Allen. She's also got the antiques. Solving a mystery while antique shopping. You like antique shopping? Let's see. White roses symbolize innocence. I strip the thorn leaves and guard petals from a cluster of luscious white blooms and looked up just as the photographer's flash went off, leaving a bright after image in the center of my field of view. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision, then tilted my head and squinted one eye so I could see to choose a larger lavender rose to form the center of the bouquet. The flash went off again, blinding me again. Okay, Miss Bloom, I know you're not used to working with cameras around. The reporter, who'd introduced himself as Ben Hanson, shifted positions with the photographer in our tiny back room. Just keep stepping me through the bouquet you're making. Call me Audrey, please. The petals in front of me were still obscured by the bright spots, but I decided I could be able to do this in my sleep by now anyway. I blinked again. The lavender rose is the symbol of love at first sight. Oh, great, I realized. I resisted the urge to wince at my own words. Love at first sight was a romantic concept I'd have to reconsider after Brad the cat. A deep purple iris went in next as an accent providing just the right amount of contrast. Iris can mean a few different things. Generally, it means a message. The purple iris in particular can stand for wisdom, an important ingredient in a marriage. One that might have helped me see through Brad, she says. Maybe this particular bouquet was a bad idea, but it was the only one that came to mind when Hanson casually said, make something original, just throw in some of your personal favorites. Another flash went off, followed by a disgusted sigh from the photographer. There's so much junk back here. He waved to the floor to ceiling shelves lined with vases, balloons, dried floral accents, picks, wires, floral tape, spray, glitter, and a ribbon of every color, size, and imaginable. Everything it takes to keep a busy floral shop supplied. Just do your best, Hanson said to the photographer. Hey, he pointed to the Queen Anne lace. I'd incorporate while the men were talking. Isn't that the same thing that grows on the side of the road? You did ask me to use my favorite. I used Queen Anne's lace in my first childhood bouquet, so it holds a special meaning for me. A quick flash of Grandma May treasuring the bouquet brought a new sense of calm, despite the running voice recorder and the photographer jockeying for position. It adds texture and softness and makes the arrangement a little more informal and fun. It symbolizes protection. Are you finished? Hanson asked, his body slumping in relief when I took the bouquet from him. Almost. I made one minor adjustment before heading to the walk-in cooler for ivy, which I used to rim the edges. After a slightly old-fashioned look, but ivy is one of my favorites because it represents both friendship and fidelity. I bound the stems with floral tape, snipped them to the appropriate length, then wrapped them with the satin ribbon. I fastened the ribbon with two pearl pins, then attached a pre-made bow of white ribbon and held the completed bouquet out for display. The flash went off again. Oh, killer shot. The photographer held the digital camera out for Hanson approval. Will that work? Hanson muttered approval. The photographer gathered his equipment and left. Allergies? Not that I'm aware of. He's the only photographer the has Ramble On has, and he needs to be at the mayor's press conference in 5 minutes. I smiled at Hanson's reference to the small town paper. Tell me, how did they ever come up with that name? Hanson's ears turned the color of his beard. I guess it's not the most impressive masthead. The paper was originally called the Ramble Pilot, but Ramblers have been calling in the On for over a century. The new owners just caved in. So, do you have an office or someplace quiet we could sit and finish the interview? We have a table where I meet with prospective clients. Um, I ushered Hanson toward the consulting nook where we make bridal dreams come true. It was so right on the sign we mounted above the wrought iron gazebo. I found it in estate sale. Liv and I flanked the structure with two homemade water features, which now display our collection of flowering houseplants, making the nook both charming and private. Here I would, as Liv had suggested, attempt to dazzle Hanson with my expert knowledge. I'd like to take a different approach, Hanson stroked his beard. I could pull half a dozen articles off the news service that would give me the same information. Readers will want to know the secret of your marriage success rate. Of my what? Your marriage success rate. I fought to keep the corners of my mouth propped in a smile. I'd come close to marriage once and I'd hardly call it a success. I don't understand. Do you have any idea how many bouquets you've made from Ramble brides? I guess the Rose and Bloom has supplied most of the recent weddings in Ramble, some of the outlying areas, well over 100, I'd imagine. 156 to be exact. How did you? I checked with your partner. That's the reason I wanted to do this interview. One of your clients came to me with an observation I found intriguing. She insists that none of the couples who use Rose and the Bloom for their bridal bouquets have ever split up. Rose and Blue, Olivia let me sneak a peek at the client list last week. I recognized most names as belonging to couples who are still together. Those I didn't know I called, and none of them, including those who later moved out of Ramble, have split up. Well, that's nice to hear, I said. It's more than nice. Do you know what the divorce rate is in Virginia? I have no idea. Well, never mind. I'll Google it before I write the article. I'm pretty sure it's not zero. This is statistically anomaly worth exploring, don't you think? Mr. Hanson, I'd like to think I had something to do with that. How could my flowers affect divorce rates? My question drew Hanson's chuckle while Liv cleared her throat nearby. I caught her eye. She gave me that look, the same one she'd given me when we were teenagers, and I took a swing at Patty Vogue for calling me Audrey Bloomers. Liz's expression melted into a smile just as Hanson turned in her direction. She continued cheerfully dousing the dry, loving African violets. Look, it's a perfectly just a fluke, Hanson said, but it sounded like a great angle for a story to me. It could end up driving more business to Rose and Bloom. People eat up that kind of thing. So let's pretend a couple comes in to order flowers. Is there something you say to them? First, the groom seldom sets foot in the shop. It's the bride and her mother, often the bride and a friend, sometimes a wedding planner. And you bring them back here? They'll take a look through our books and choose something that catches their eye. Usually they come in with an idea, maybe something they've seen on the internet or a bridal magazine or photos of celebrities. Right after the royal wedding, we did a few bouquets similar to Kate Middleton's. And then I tweak their ideas a bit and count the flowers, adding in labor and materials to give them an estimate of the cost. I start with the bride's bouquet first, then base the rest of the flowers. What do you mean by tweaking? I'd be lying if I didn't say most of our business involved putting together arrangements from a picture. But I'd like to encourage brides to put their own personal stamp on the bouquet. As a designer, I can help them choose flowers with the right colors, sizes, and textures to complement each other and contrast in ways that make a statement. Hanson tilted his head. Think about baby's breath. What's the last time you see baby's breath not wrapped around a rose? The two flowers couldn't be more dissimilar, yet they complement each other. The baby's breath makes the rose more luscious, and the rose makes the baby breath seem lighter and more delicate. And around red carnations, I like my baby's breath. Um, that's the second time you talked about flower speaking. Does anything else ever go into a bouquet that speaks to you? Well, there's another thing. It seems silly and odd fashion, but many of the bridal finds it romantic. Hanson said nothing, only leaned in closer. I'd like to tweak the design based on the language of the flowers. Language. He ceased his brows. Like I said, as I made my bouquet for each picture has one meaning attached. When you put them together, they can form more complex statements. The language of flowers goes back, well, quite a ways. The Turks were using it in as early as the 17th century. For example, Shakespeare used it. There's rosemary, that's for remembrance, pray, love, remember. And then there's pansies for thought. Sorry, I cleared my throat. Hamlet, I got carried away, but the language of the flowers reached a pinnacle during the Victorian era. During the age of chaperones, often the only way a couple could communicate what they felt was through flowers. Who knew? Who knew? So let's get past this. I see a name I remember. So further on in the chapter, Hanson has left. Um, while Liv cashed out the latest customer, the bell rang again. I looked up to see a man in baker's white standing in the door. At least they think they were baker's whites, since he wasn't Ricardo Montalban or Mr. Clean. Not all men can pull off the white look. Case in point, Mr. Clean. But this one did. Perhaps due to the tan muscles jutting from his short sleeves or the wavy locks of brown hair that covered his head. Do you know who Ricardo Montalban is? Do you know who Rourke is? Do you know who Fantasy Island is? Go tweak it, Google it. Although today's Rourke in my head is Eve Dallas's Rourke in J.D. Robb's book, but in the 70s, Mr. Rourke was Fantasy Island. Someone just posted an old TV page of a TV guide, and I'm sitting there going, damn, I watched every one of those shows when they were brand new. Charlie's Angels, Fantasy Island, The Love Boat, Maud, All in the Family, One Day at a Time, Happy Days, Laverne and Shirley, Fish, Columbo, Ironside, all of them. Watched them all when they were brand new. You can watch them on Pluto and Nick at Night now, I believe. He reminded me briefly of a moonflower, bright, strong, elusive. He crossed the room to where I stood and towered over me. Since I'm 5'10", that's quite a trick. He flashed a smile and said something. The words seemed to hang in the air, but I had no recollection of them. Perhaps because I'm only thinking of the meaning of the moonflower. I only dream of love. I beg your pardon, what was wrong with me? Is there a manager about? Yes, I'm the manager. Well, co-owner, my cousin and I. Audrey Bloom, how may I help you? Nick Maxwell. Oh, fiddleheads, I said, employing one of the green words that pause for cursing in our small shop. Sorry, I'll get you. I ran to the back room where I banged my head 3 times on the door of the walk-in, trying to knock myself into sense, then brought back a dampened towel. Sorry, occupational hazard, no problem. But for me, it's usually flour. I waited, left politely, and waited. He waited. Oh, the reason I came in. I recently opened the Baby Cakes Bakery down the street. The new cupcake place? That's right. We started out with cupcakes, now we're trying to branch out into weddings, like those cupcake arrangements in the bridal magazines and a full-size cakes too. You read bridal magazines? Guilty. Another trade hazard, I'm afraid. I know I coordinate weddings for the shop, so I have a stack of them on either side of my couch. I use them for coffee tables. I usually read them at the library. Hey, if you ever want to come over and check out the back issues, my apartment is just a couple of blocks from here. Oh, great. Without thinking, I just invited a stranger to my apartment. She invited this guy to her apartment. She just met him 2 seconds ago. Without thinking, I just invited a stranger to my apartment. He's probably married anyway. I looked at his ring finger empty, but that always didn't mean anything. I meant just do that. By the time I get to the library, the Brights have ripped out half the pictures anyway, and bought many of them here, I'm afraid. Oh, I wonder if it would be possible to place some flyers in your shop. If you want, I could put something advertising the Rose and Bloom in the bakery. I'll get some business cards. Great. I have a stack of flyers over later today. Oh, I forgot. Do you have any small bouquets? Nothing fancy? And I pointed to the cooler, something like that. My jaw tightened as he picked out a tasteful arrangement of tulips and daffodils. If he had a wife or girlfriend, it would be better to find out. Before I made an idiot out of myself and did something silly like inviting him to my apartment to look at bridal magazines. He's not married, my assistant Amber Lee said. The moment I made it to the back room, Amber Lee was a tall African American woman with a hint of gray in her tight, cropped hair and a deep throat laugh more infectious than pink eye in a daycare center. A lifelong resident of Ramble and former school teacher, she taught at least one child from every family and could still dish up dirt on most, but never in a mean way. She struck me more as the kindly grandmother type, looking over her children, warts and all. I went for innocence. Who's not married? Mr. Baby Cakes, of course. Can't fool us. I saw you checking out the baker's buns. Why, I've got plenty of bridal magazines in my apartment. Stop it over any time. Liv sweated Amber's on. Give the kid a break. Although only 2 years older, Liv had a nasty habit of referring to me as the kid. She turned back to me. Don't let a little teasing dissuade you. The baker is pretty. Hot, Amber Lee tried. Sweet, smoking, well done. I rolled my eyes. It doesn't matter anyway. If I were ready for another romance, he brought flowers for someone. That's new. I haven't heard anything about a girlfriend. Let me see what I can find out. What kind of flowers did he buy? Liv asked. Pink tulips and daffodils. What do those mean in super secret language of yours? Pink tulips represent we care and compassion. Daffodils represent regard or vanity. But if we want to sell them, we say they mean regard. She wagged her finger at me. In either case, not the most romantic flowers one can choose. He probably chose them for a display in his bakery shop, but to find out what he actually used them for, you're gonna have to read the next chapter in the book yourself. This was cute. This was cute. I got some good chuckles out of this. You'll have to go check it out. And have a good day.